Hello everyone, it's Mr. Pierce. This was your homework today, Friday. I'm having a lot of people that are having difficulty with this and they're not understanding. So what I'm going to do is actually go over this page. We will have one that's similar on Monday. So if you log in and you see this, okay, then you can click, send me a little message and say submitted, or you can go ahead and copy down what I've done here. I just want to make sure that you've seen it. So when we look at the first one and it says 8 divided by 6. Now as a fraction, that means the 8 would be the numerator and the fraction bar would be the division sign and the 6 would be our denominator. Now, can this become a mixed number? Of course. If your numerator is larger than your denominator, it can become a mixed number. Okay, so when we do this, we simply say, okay, if we have 8/6, well, I know that 6/6 is equal to 1 whole, and I would have 2/6 left over. Now, will that simplify? Yes, it will indeed simplify. As we know, this should become 1 and 1/3. Now, if we were doing this as a division problem, okay, we would set it up as it's 8 divided by 6. That means 6 is our divisor. 8 is our dividend, and we simply divide. 6 divides into 8 one time. 1 times 6 is 6. So I write it underneath, I subtract, I get 2. That 2 becomes the top number in my fraction. The 6 that was my divisor becomes the bottom number. So notice that says 1 and 2/6, which is the same as 1 and 1/3. Let's go down to the next one. It says 5 divided by 4. Well, when we're writing that as a fraction, that means 5 is my numerator. Again, the fraction bar is the division sign, and the 4 would go underneath. Can this become a mixed number? Of course. Whenever the numerator is larger than the denominator, it can become a mixed number. So if we know we have 5/4, well, 4/4 would be 1 whole. So this would be 1 and 1/4. Okay? If I chose to do this as a division problem, which is one of the things that we need to do, it would look like the following. Okay, I would put 4 as my divisor, 5 as my dividend, and I would divide. Does 4 divide into 5? Of course, it goes one time. 1 times 4 is 4. I write it underneath and subtract. I would get 1. That 1 that looks like my remainder becomes the top number in my fraction. The divisor becomes the bottom number. Okay, so if you notice, I have 1 and 1/4. In the next example, you will see that I have 7 divided by 5. That means 7 is my numerator. The division sign is the same as the fraction bar, and 5 would go underneath. Can this become a mixed number? The answer, of course, is yes, okay, because the numerator is larger than the denominator. So if I know that 5/5 is 1 whole, if I have 7/5, I have 1 whole and 2/5. If I set this up as a division problem, that means 5 would be my divisor, 7 would be my dividend, and I simply divide. 5 divides into 7 once. 1 times 5, of course, is 5. So I write it underneath and subtract, and I get 2. Okay, that 2 can become the top number in my fraction, and the 5 becomes the bottom number in my fraction, so 1 and 2/5. For the next two problems, you will notice that the words or the letters NA are there. And that is where it says mixed number. These two problems cannot become mixed numbers. But when I look at the number 6 divided by 8, that means as a fraction, 6 is my numerator and 8 is my denominator. Now I might realize already that that would of course end up being 3/4. Okay, so that would be 3/4. Now when I go to do the division, okay, I already know that because this one cannot be a mixed number, when I divide, it's going to become a decimal. Okay, so it says 6 divided by 8. That tells us that 8 is my divisor and the 6 is my dividend. Well, you might say, well, gee, Mr. Pierce, 8 does not divide into 6. And you are correct. But if we simply remember something we've done in the past, where we change it to 60/10ths by adding a decimal and a 0, now we know that we can divide. So 8 does not divide into 6, but 8 times what will get me close to 60? That would, of course, be 7. 7 times 8 is 56. Whoops. Bad writing there. Okay. And when I subtract, I get 4. Now, again, I'm not going to have a remainder. So I am simply going to add another 0 and bring it down. And now I divide 8 into 40, and it will go 5 times. 5 times 8 is indeed 40. So if you notice that 6 divided by 8, okay, that ends up being 0.75. Okay, last night in the example, when we had one that was 3/4, okay, obviously 3/4 of a dollar would be 75 cents. So this should be something we should realize when we do this problem. In the next problem, we see 4 divided by 5. So that means 4 would be my numerator, and the division sign is the same as the fraction bar, and that would be the 5 on the bottom. So we can look at that and we can see, gee, the numerator is not larger than the denominator, so it cannot become a mixed number. But if we have to do a division, because it does say 4 divided by 5, that means 5 is my numerator, 5 is my divisor, and 4 is my dividend. Okay, once again, can I say 4 divided by 5? The answer is, of course, no. But if I add a decimal and a 0 and bring my decimal straight up and change it to 40/10ths, now I can divide. Okay, 5 goes into 40/10ths 8 times. So the 8 would go there. Of course, we'd put our 0 there. We'd write this underneath, and we see that when we change this to a decimal, it becomes 8/10ths. It just so happens that an equivalent fraction to 4/5 would be 8/10ths. So if you'll notice, these two say the exact same thing. Okay? We will do more of this on Monday, so be prepared.